Nice, I like that.
Yeah, old Iwi, baby.
If anyone's watching, we are T-minus 4 minutes from start kicking this thing off.
And I'm grateful, everybody, and I'm hopeful, everybody, and I'm thankful, everybody. Well, I'm thankful for my life not been too painful. I'm blessed now with the quality of life, seldom things I cannot do. And I'm grateful for our health is on our plate full. I'm trying not to be too wasteful of this land. And I'm hopeful there's some of us who have our mouths full. We'll break a piece off for my brothers and my sisters' empty hands. Yeah. And I'm thankful, everybody, and I'm grateful, everybody, and I'm hopeful, everybody, and I'm thankful, everybody. And I am thankful for my life's not been too painful. I am blessed now with the quality of life. Seldom things I cannot do. And I am grateful for our health is on our plate full.
All right, we're doing it. How you doing, Weston?
Doing all right. How about you, Nick?
I'm great. You're joining us from Minneapolis today, right?
Yes, live from my basement studio.
Right on. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, everybody. My name's Nick Taylor. Very excited to bring you another interactive virtual class with a very talented and musician and producer. Today's episode features Weston Schick, a sax player who grew up in North Dakota and struggled to find enough paying gigs to pay his primary source of income. That struggle forced him to diversify how he approached music. Flash forward 15 years, now a multi-instrumentalist who tours the country performing live. He's charted on Billboard and iTunes and does session work in engineering from home. Weston's here to give a crash course on how he approaches using Ableton Live as a songwriting tool. Really quick, before we get going, this is one of 7 episodes, happen over the next couple weeks. They're all part of Bellinghome Music's COVID-19 relief fundraiser. If you're finding these videos helpful, please take a note of the text scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. It tells you how to donate through goodkarmapay.com. You don't need to sign up for anything if you already use Venmo and PayPal. All right, enough of that. Let's do it.
Hey. So just going to jump right into this. Yeah, so like Nick said, we're going to go over a little bit today about how to use Ableton Live as a songwriting tool.
Sweet.
So
I forgot though, really quick though, before we start, I wanted to ask you how it's been really quick with your experience in the quarantine era, I guess we're going to call it, over in there in Minneapolis.
Well, I mean, just being a musician, and I mean, not so dissimilar from a lot of the other workforce around the country. I mean, a lot of our lives are kind of disrupted a little bit. All my shows were canceled all summer, a bunch of festivals canceled all the way up through August, pretty much. So I think this is really going to change the face about how we approach things. So yeah, just got hurt a little bit, but there's some silver lining in the whole deal. I had a lot of studio work that I needed to catch up on, so it's not like I haven't been busy and haven't still. I mean, I had work to catch up on, and I was kind of stressing about when I was going to find time to mix and
do
overdubs and all that kind of thing. And hey, I had the time all of a sudden. So I mean, it was I didn't get crushed as hard as some, but it's been different. It's been different.
Yeah,
but okay.
For sure. Sweet. Good to hear. Well, I'm glad you're doing all right. Looking forward to hearing what you have to show us today.
Well, yeah. So like Nick had said, I mean, I'm a saxophone player, but out of necessity, I started playing a lot of other stuff because not every band needs a saxophone player, but every band needs like a bass player or a guitar player or something. So I started playing other things and started getting into producing and everything to kind of supplement some income for those times where I do not have shows, like right now.
Yeah.
So in pertaining to Ableton, this is a massive program that can do all kinds of stuff, from multi-track recording to live looping to even running your light shows and things like that. It's pretty massive. It can be a little difficult when you're first getting into it to kind of understand what everything does, but just like anything, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. So that's what we're here to help you out with today. I'm just going to start with giving you a little bit of the basic layout of Ableton in case you are new to the program. Then I'm going to go through how exactly to record stuff. Going to go in and the IO matrix is what we call like your in and outs. And I'm going to show you how to make a scratch track for yourself. So using this as a songwriting tool, so then you can use that scratch track to overdub later.
Yeah. And just really quick, Weston here, he uses it in his band, John Wayne and the Pain, which that was the band playing there at the beginning of the episode. So yeah, that's kind of one of the main reasons I wanted you to do this episode, because I know you use it a lot and it sounds really good on stage. So yeah, I know we aren't really talking about that as much today, but I think we're going to do that again maybe a week from today or sometime down the road.
Yeah, we're gonna do that in our secondary episode, a little bit more of how to use this as a live tool. But yeah, both our bass player and myself both use Ableton on stage during our live shows, and it's pretty powerful and actually a really crucial part of our sound. So anyway, but yeah, we'll get into that next week. But as far as getting into this now, I'm going to show you a little bit of what we're going to be working with, a little taste of where we're going to get to at the end of it. So I have already recorded a couple things before we started this class, just to save a little bit of time. I've got a couple of drum loops going here. I've got a couple of bass parts, some guitar, some Wurlitzer organs, and then some other stuff that we're gonna get into here later. But I will just show you a little bit of what we're gonna end up eventually kind of doing. So going in here, I'm just recording a few different parts, like an intro, and then just pretending like this is a verse here, going into a chorus. And that's good for there, just for what we're talking about. Now, this screen that I'm on right here is called the arrangement view. Now, this is where I'd use a lot of, this is where I print down a bunch of ideas that I have, riffs that I'm going off of in all of these little cells right here. Like this will be a cell. Now, every one of these cells contains a different idea. If you notice down here, this is just a little audio clip of a guitar part. And I go through and I arrange this stuff around. If I want to move this, I can drop and drag, move it to different sections. I can mix and match different guitar parts and bass parts and different to kind of feel out exactly which parts I like working together. And along with that, I'm going to hit tab. And then this is the session view. This is what you're going to see in most DAWs if you're using like Pro Tools or Logic or anything like that. This is how it's going to look when you're recording with your waveforms. Now, this is exactly what I just went through on the other screen, but it's got it set up like a session. Now, the reason I like to do it like this, starting in this arrangement view, is I can actually go through and record, like if I want this intro, like I have on row 1 here, I want that to go 2 times through. Then in row 2, I've got the verse, like I'll do that 4 times. Then I'll go back to an intro, and I can actually lay down the exact sections that I am kind of playing with throughout the entire arrangement. So then when I go back to my session view, I've got it all laid out start to finish about how I want to go through this. Sweet. And then I will go through and I'll re-record a bass part with a more solid take that doesn't have my loops going through. It feels a little more organic and natural for putting in fills or doing overdubs later. So that's kind of a way that I go through it to flesh out a bunch of ideas and come to a final arrangement product that I really like, that I can send to other members of my band, that they can listen and then figure out, ahead of time how they want to play. Because I mean, we don't really get together and rehearse as much as we would really like to. So we got to do a little work on our beforehand, get together, rehearse one day before we head out on the road. So that's how we rehearse new tunes and do all that, everything like that too. So not only can it be used as a rehearsal tool and a writing tool, but also this is if you wanted to actually just record yourself for demos and other purposes. This is how we do it.
Yeah, I just started playing around with it here, trying to learn it the last month or so, and it's a lot to it. I'm mainly a Pro Tools guy, but I definitely like it for like the songwriting aspect. I wouldn't necessarily jump into it as a mixing tool. I know a lot of people do, but I'm just used to Pro Tools. But yeah, this is really cool what you're talking about.
I mean, I do use it as a mixing tool, and I mean, I do track with it. It's not as fast as Logic or Studio One or Pro Tools. I mean, you definitely can. I've gotten really fast with hotkeys and grouping things and doing things to kind of speed up the process a little bit, but it's not super ideal for that from what I've heard. But I'm also not well versed in any other DAW, so this is the quickest for me. I mean, that's the name of the game. You want to pick the DAW that you're the quickest and most efficient with, because time is money.
Yeah.
So so I guess before I go back into exactly how I kind of made through all that kind of stuff, I am just going to give a little quick overview of what Ableton has to offer here, just in case you are new and do not know a lot about the layout. I'm going to skip over a couple of things that we probably won't get into today and aren't necessary for what we're going to be going through, the topics for today. So we're going to skip over these I mean, this is for if you can link Ableton sessions together on a closed network, like my bass player and I do this, so that we have matching click tracks and tempos and stuff. What you are going to be using is a tap tempo and click track. This is your beats per minute that you got here. So you can either tap them in, or you can physically click one and write in the number with your BPM. This is going to be the meter that you're in for your click track. click track is on and off right here. Then you can also change if you want a lead in or if you want different sound for it, and then also what kind of subdivisions that you want your click track to be in. And then while we're talking about click track here, when you want your click track in your actual in your ear, the volume for that is right here. So this is the volume for that click track. Also, the little headphone button right here. That's your click track volume. This is the measure that you're on. This is your play, record, stop functions. We're going to skip over some of these today, not super necessary. This is going to be looping a section when you are in the session view. This is for looping whatever section you have right here. This little block is so you can change exactly how many bars you want to loop. So I use this a lot when I'm mixing and when I want to listen to a same part over and over and over again. You can also use that within your live things. Everything is going to be looped automatically when you're in the arrangement view. So that will keep going however many bars you've got. If you've got a clip that's only 4 bars, it'll match that 4 bars. If you've got a bass line, I think one of these was a little bit longer. See, this is an 8-bar bass line. That'll just keep looping. And then also too, while we're talking here, yeah, if you have any questions and you want me to stop and answer something, you can type those in the chat and Nick will let me know.
Yeah, for sure. I actually just typed that in right when you said that. We're on the same wavelength, I guess.
All right, so getting over here, we aren't going to really use these two right now. So this little percentage tool that's moving here, this is going to be kind of important. This is monitoring your CPU. So that's how hard you are pushing your computer. This is important for a couple of reasons. Also, one, like the recording quality of what you're doing is going to affect the CPU. And then if this is pushing up over like 25, 30%, 40%, somewhere around there, you're going to start getting poor audio quality. You're going to start missing some frames of sound. It's going to sound distorted. And then this D here will light up red whenever you have a dropout. The ways to keep this down are going to be monitoring your bit rate and the how high of recording quality that you're using, like how many kilohertz that you're transferring for data. And then other things that monitor that too is if you have other programs running. So I like to keep my computer as bare as possible when I am doing recording sessions and obviously when I'm playing live. So Xing out of Spotify and your email and any other browser that you have open, anything that you're not immediately needing, you're going to want to clear off so it's not taking any threads of your CPU. The other thing is plugins that are not native to Ableton. So like if, for example, if you use any stuff from like Waves or other ones that are kind of power hungry are like Auto-Tune, Ryan Terry's that one. Those will also jump up your CPU quite a bit. Isotope is another one that, I mean, they sound great. They're awesome plugins. But they really will crunch up a lot of your processing. So if we do a mixing episode where we start getting into more, audio plugins and things like that, I might revisit that again, but we're going to move on from that for now and just notice that if that's ever crushing you, you might have to do a little bit of reworking how you're doing. So another thing I'm going to go through quick is I'm going to go through some preferences. So this will be, if you're on Mac, it'll be your command comma, or you can go up here into your live and hit preferences. So I'm going to have to reshare the screen in just one moment here.
Yep.
All right. So in sharing the screen, so the look and the feel, this is going to be, you can kind of customize how you want your Ableton screen to look, what kind of colors you like. Just kind of make it yours. You're going to be spending a lot of time in here. So next thing we're jumping into here is going to be your whatever interface that you're going to be using. I have a couple interfaces hooked up to you right now. I use them for different purposes. So right now I'll be doing a Thunderbolt is what I'm on. You can change your input configurations, so your IOs. We're going to revisit that IO in just a minute when I'm telling you exactly how we're going to be tracking things. So now what I'm going to get into is the sample rate and latency. This is going to affect your CPU. Right now I've got it set pretty low just because I'm just playing with some ideas. And I mean, the recording quality that's going to be set over Zoom isn't that great anyway. If I was going to be recording a very high quality sample, I would really bump this up to 192K. But whatever interface is whatever amount you're available on your interface, I would try to max that out if I could. The next thing that you're going to be messing with after that is sample rates. So when you change some of these sample rates, it's going to be how many bytes of information it's getting per millisecond. And then that's also going to change your latency. So you want to try to find a happy medium of latency that you can deal with. If you're going to be monitoring on your computer, things like Universal Audio, like the one that I have, and like Scarlett's, their Focusrite, a lot of those have direct monitoring where you, it won't go through your DAW before it's coming out. So that's really nice for latency. So these probably aren't going to really matter so much for you with that. But if you are tracking a vocalist per se, or if you yourself personally like to hear some reverb on your voice that helps you sing a little bit better or whatever, where you do have to monitor through your DAW, sometimes you're going to hit a little bit of delay, a little latency that might mess with you a little bit. So that's where you're going to want to play with some of your settings here with what your sample rate and what your buffer size is going to be.
Nice. Yeah, I remember you were saying like in our previous conversations around 8 milliseconds would be, you know, something you could put up with. I mean, I guess it's always different
like
for everyone, but
even at 8, even 15 milliseconds, I mean, that's you can barely feel that. When it starts getting up over probably 20, then you start to actually really notice it. And then it also depends on what you're doing too. I mean, if you're singing things, it's not as bad. If you're playing a 16th note run on a keyboard or something really ripping fast where you need to really have that stuff metered out, then it's going to make more of a difference. But yeah, so just play with that with whatever's comfortable for you. I mean, I like to keep it around 8 to 15 if I can. I don't seem to notice things that way. Hopping down into Midi, this is where you can manually turn on and off different things, different MIDI controllers that you have. Ableton is pretty good about auto knowing a lot of this stuff, so you shouldn't really have to search for these type of things unless you have a really oddball MIDI controller or something that's old. But for the most part, it'll just search it for you right away, so that's not a super big deal. File folder, these are where you're going to be saving sessions and everything. I recommend for making your computer run nice and smooth that you keep most of your sessions and also most of your plugins and other audio files on a separate hard drive. You want to try to keep everything as clean and lean as possible on your actual computer, whether you're using a desktop or a notebook. And even if you have a whole bunch of, let's say you have a 2 terabyte hard drive or something, you still want to try to keep it as clean as possible. You're just going to be running more efficiently that way. So the library, kind of the same thing. I tell it content location. So brain space, that is my external hard drive. So that's where I've got all my Ableton files and everything. You can tell it exactly where to go when you're needing to look for things. I also have plugins in the same spot. I've got a couple of them on my actual computer itself, just the ones that I use for my live session. In the event that I have a crash and I need to reboot Ableton quickly, then I won't be searching through hard drives for the data. It'll just be, it's just a little faster. I'm up in a couple more seconds when you're on stage and it's live, every second kind of counts. So I try to leave those ones that I absolutely need native to my computer, and then the rest of the stuff I keep on a hard drive. As far as this recording and warping kind of stuff, we're going to go through this maybe in another episode. So it's not super important for this particular one. So I'm going to share back to my normal screen here. All right, so getting into this here, I am going to probably just get into exactly what this IO matrix is and start showing you how I record things. So, so in this arrangement view here, again, so this is going to be my IO section is right here. Now, whether it is a track that has audio data, whether it's an audio track or a MIDI track, will be two different things. Now, it'll say MIDI from or audio from here. Now, under the audio from, you can pick whatever channel that you've got that instrument in. So if you notice, the 3 is the one that's getting data right now. That's the one I have my microphone plugged into. 1 is the one that I have my high Z inputs on my interface. That's what I have either plug in bass or guitar or something like that. I guess 2, we can quickly talk about what those are. High Z input versus normal input. A high Z input is a high gain stage input that's more set up for instruments that typically run into an amplifier. So like your bass guitar, something like that, where they need a little bit of a higher gain staging in order for them to have a nice quality recording, because typically they're passive. Typically they don't have a very hot signal. So if you put them into a channel that's not a high Z input, you'll be finding you're going to be cranking the gain, sometimes almost maxing it out, depending on what interface that you're kind of working with. So it makes it a much more manageable signal when you're using a high Z input. So I recommend doing that if you are recording direct to interface from one of your guitars or basses or something like that. I haven't had problems with it with keyboards or whatever. I typically put those in just another input that's not a high Z, but some analog synthesizers I have, and then other ones I typically put in a high Z input. So back to the IOs from Midis. Now with these, you can pick the MIDI from. You can dedicate which MIDI controller is going to be controlling what voice in which channel. So a lot of times when I'm just writing stuff at home, I'll do from all channels, and then it'll take whatever MIDI controller is plugged in is what it's going to take from. If you have multiple MIDI controllers plugged in, it will take from both of them, whichever one that you're playing. But when I'm like on stage for a live set, I have each channel, which is a different sound. I have it dedicated to a certain keyboard, so that when I'm playing my bottom keyboard, it's not firing off some synthesizer sample that I have in here. That one's only dedicated to my top keyboard.
Nice.
So you can go through and pick which one you want. As far as my outs, I typically have all the audios to master. And then as far as monitoring purposes, I leave that on auto a majority of the time, unless I'm having some latency problems where, like if we were talking about you are monitoring through your Focusrite, then you might want to turn this monitoring off, because you're going to be hearing from your Focusrite and from the DAW, and they might be off just a little bit, and you'll hear some phasing.
So auto just like it must excuse me, it must choose when it's hearing, it's direct monitoring versus the other.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never known about auto. That doesn't really have that in anything else I've seen. That's pretty cool.
So yep. So and then I guess, yeah. So moving on to the next thing is, if you notice that some of my outs I have here instead of to master, on some of these ones over here I have out. The reason that I would do this is I don't want this channel in particular, this synthesizer that I have on here, to be going to my master. I'm going to be using this. I'm going to send it out of a different out into an amplifier, from the amplifier into a talk box, coming back into my mouth. So for that reason, I've got that one routed to a different thing. So with your in and out matrix, I mean, most of the time you're going to be using it to master. The only time I would use one of these audio out to is if I'm sending it somewhere different, like I was saying, out of my interface into a talk box. Or the other thing you can do is set it to audio to a different channel. Like if I wanted to have that, like if I'm using like side chain compression or anything in a recording capacity, this is also how I would do that. I would have audio coming in from a different source. So that's we'll get a little bit more into that in another episode here. So I guess before I get into recording here, does we have any questions over there by anybody, Nick?
Not so far. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just type it into the chat and we'll keep you updated.
All right. So yep, for time purposes, I did go through and I went through and already recorded a bunch of samples, but I am going to show you exactly how I go through and do that.
Sweet.
So I'm going to record another bass line along with this groove. Now I also have some, I'm going to turn off. Got a compressor and a couple other things I'm not going to use at this exact moment. So click into a new cell, hit our record, make sure I'm armed over here. Bass drops out. I'm gonna have to make sure that I'm unmuted. So, all right. So I'm going to solo out that channel just so we can listen a little bit to what we had. So now, when we're in this arrangement view, this is kind of how I go through and edit what clips I want. So typically I will play through a section of it. So like I was saying before, it automatically loops. So it'll keep playing whatever row I was on indefinitely. So I will sometimes record 32 bars, 64 bars even if it's a really difficult line or something like that. And then I can go through and I can chop how long I want that clip to be. So that'll be right up here in this. So I click on the actual clip itself. It'll bring it down into here into my clip view. And I can move what spot will be repeated. So I'm going to play. I'm going to also turn on the click track here. I always like this. It helps me kind of know which ones are when I'm on time or whatever. Change the volume if I need here.
We have a quick question,
Sure.
if you don't mind, and it's kind of something we covered earlier. This is from Jesse. She says, "Hey Weston, do you have preferred platform for recording?"
It is Ableton. Like, I mean, a preferred DAW. Is that what you mean by a platform?
I think so. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
They didn't specify, but
yep, it would be Ableton, and just because I have used it for so many years, where it is what I'm most efficient at. There are times where I do get frustrated, especially if I'm multi-tracking big sessions, like drum set per se, you know, where I've got 10 microphones up on a drum set at one time. I mean, that is sometimes when I'm taking multiple takes, that gets a little hairy to edit. It's not as fast as like Studio One or Pro Tools for editing, but like if you spend time like I have now, I'm a lot quicker with hotkeys and everything. And I mean, I can just click and use arrow keys. And I mean, I'm not wasting as much time, but it's still not as efficient as some of the other ones. But I think where Ableton really excels is going to be in situations like we're looking at right now, being able to use it as a songwriting tool, as a live tool, as a looping machine. I mean, like Pro Tools or Studio One doesn't have that capability. Logic is pretty good with songwriting as well, but not quite where Ableton is. This is where it really shines. So I guess if you were using this, if you were wanting to be an engineer, where that was what you strictly wanted to do, I mean, as much as I love Ableton, I would probably say look at a different DAW. If what you just wanted to do was produce and engineer. But if you wanted to make beats, like maybe a hip hop producer or a live DJ or using it for live sound or something, Ableton all day long.
Sweet.
So back into what what we were working on before. Hopefully that answers your question, Jesse. So this is pretty close here. Now this will automatically crossfade for me and everything within my take it off solo. All right. So now I'll be able to go through and demo and see, like, do I like that one more? Or do I like this first one that I had more? I'm going to solo out a couple of things here. So I can, yep, then soloing right down here. Make sure, and I guess I can talk about this really quick too. Soloing will be just that track. The number on and off, this is turning the track on and off. So it's either the track is on, track is off. This is arming a track. So this will be not only for recording, but also you won't get any sound coming out if you don't have that track armed. You won't hear it in your headphones. You won't hear it through your monitors. It won't be recording information. So always making sure that that track is armed. Ableton automatically only lets you arm one track at a single time. So I'm not sure what it is on PC, but on Macs, you hold the command button and then you can arm multiple tracks.
Nice.
So if I'm doing 10 microphones on a drum set, if I'm doing a stereo track for like a stereo recording guitar or for like a keyboard or something, then I will be able to arm multiple tracks at one time. But so yes, back to soloing out these three so I can kind of showing about different demos. I want to demo a different guitar part. Now Ableton within one bar will wait until the next full measure before it starts whatever clip that you have in there, before it'll start repeating it. So in the event that you are using this as a live tool or for like looping or anything like that, do know that you have yourself a full bar if you need to get to another instrument or do something else. But you can also, if you hit it in the middle of a phrase, it will also not, see, like in the middle of a phrase here.
Yeah.
So now they're no longer lined up. So let's just be a little careful of that, if that is how you're doing that. But this is how I kind of go through and see like which bass line do I like, which guitar part do I like together. I can go through and flesh out a bunch of ideas until I find the stuff that I really like and I feel makes sense.
And you can even drag that new one you just did. You could drag that one up in to the top.
Yep. Let's say like, hey, I don't like that first one that I did anymore. I want this new one. Now,
so
that new one that I recorded is the one
I saw too that you drug number 4 down first. Like if you drag one on top of the other, will it erase it or anything, or it just won't let you bring it there?
Yep, gone.
Oh, okay. Control Z, Apple Z.
Yeah, Control Z is my friend, dude.
Yeah. Hey, we have a question.
Sure.
From 6-string Sam. Hi guys, I've been having some trouble in the drum area of Ableton. I've dragged a desired kit into a Midi cell, but nothing seems to happen. Bottom line, I can't really get the drums to play in my track. Any tips?
Okay. So yeah, so you're having a problem with your drum rack within a Midi. Here, let me make a new Midi track here. So I just did a new Midi track. That's Shift Command T. If you're using some hotkeys, just Command T will be a new audio track. Let's go into my drums. Let's add a drum rack. If you're just clicking on them, you can kind of demo to see what they're going to sound like. Okay, so this is what he's talking about as far as having a drum rack down here. This is going to automatically link to different things on your MIDI controller, like different, like typically, let me arm this track here. Solo. It's a little bit starting to peak. So as far as the problems that you're having, are they, Sam, are they, you not have it, it's not playing anything when you've got your drum rack down here?
kind of wait for him to type.
Sure.
Might be a little delayed too, so
Sure.
just kind of wait.
Well, I guess you can stop me when it gets in there.
Okay.
As far as so these will all be dedicated to MIDI notes within my MIDI keyboard, and this is going to be your keyboard roll down here. This is telling you where they are on your keyboard, like if it's C2 or C4. You can move these to a different space if you wanted to. You can also, each one of them has got a different EQ on it too. This is for your drum rack globally. But
what if you don't have like a MIDI keyboard? You can just drag samples in, right?
Yep. You can, if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, this right here, this key, this is going to turn your computer keyboard into a MIDI keyboard. So you do always have a MIDI keyboard. It's not super velocity sensitive. It's not super awesome, but so starting at like A will be your C2. So those your keyboard is set up, and then Z and X will be moving you up and down octaves on your MIDI keyboard. So you can still key in MIDI data. I guess we can use his question now to kind of talk about how I key in MIDI data as well.
And he responded to, if you want to take that first.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said I can hear the samples when I click on them, but they won't play along with my instrument tracks.
So when you're doing a drum rack, you have to physically play those. I mean, that's just raw MIDI data. You might be wanting to try to find a clip. So instead of in your drum racks, like those aren't really going to do anything. This is just like kind of a demo clip of what they're going to sound like. You're going to have to like physically key in the MIDI data. Like I'll show you here right now. Let me turn these off. Get my click track on. I'm going to arm this. I'm going to solo out these 3, and let's record a little bit. So there's some MIDI data. This is what your MIDI data is going to kind of look down there. So Jesse, that was I just played along with my MIDI keyboard behind me to get in my kick drum and the snare clap and everything. If you're looking for a clip, like I have, like this is what I typically do that to save a bunch of time, is I use clips. Like these over here are actually just audio file clips. To find those within Ableton, you're going to probably want to go down in here to samples or clips, and then try to find something that's going to fit a little bit with the style that what you're doing. Sometimes I'll find a drum loop first, then I'll start writing a song to the drum loop. Sometimes I have a song idea, and then I sit for an hour looking through different drum loops that I have.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I like the sounds, then I will just make the drum loop myself.
And yeah, those the clips, you can they'll play at different BPMs. If, for instance, you grab one that says 114 and we're at 112, it'll play at 112 just fine.
Yep, that'll automatically. I mean, some of them, if they're designed to be like let's say if some of these are at 90,
right? It's probably more like a hip hop.
Put it in at a 180 or something like that. It's gonna sound really, really weird. Like the phrasing isn't gonna be the same. And then also to kind of be. This is something that I kind of did right away that wasn't very helpful for me. With your BPM that you're doing, always use the lowest number. You shouldn't really be recording anything over like 180 BPM. Like that's going to be pretty fast. Like I was doing that sometimes for wanting the subdivision, but then as soon as I was dropping in clips or drum tracks or anything like that, they were just lightning fast, and I couldn't make the grooves like where I wanted to. So instead, if I wanted something to be subdivided with eighth notes, or I wanted to hear 16th notes in my click track, I was just bumping up the tempo instead of going over to my click track, going down and being like, I want to hear eighth notes in my click track. Like I want my click track to be bop, 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 bop.
Yeah.
or 16th notes. So I would do that here with the rhythm of where you want your click and keep your BPM as low as possible typically. And then, so, but yeah, I guess Sam, to your, or was it
Just Sam.
Sam, yeah. I would look for something that's a clip or a sample to try to drop in. Some of those clips and samples have MIDI kits that go along with them, depending on what company that you got them from. Like the ones that are proprietary to Ableton Live. A lot of those do have a kit that goes along with it. So sometimes I will hit a loop, go through, and then I'll chop it up. And then if I need to add another kick drum or something like that, where I don't want to try to separate it from the loop because there's also a snare hit on it or a cymbal hit with it, and I can't cleanly get that out, I can also find the drum rack that corresponds with it and then MIDI in a drum kick or whatever, and then can kind of make it that way. So while we're talking about MIDI data, it also jumps down here into your MIDI area, just like that clip view that we were talking about before. So I can go through to edit the length. Now, one thing that I do want to make sure that people are aware of with MIDI data, there are two different things that you're noticing down here. So this is what note is playing. You can move this up if I didn't want that to be a kick drum. If I wanted that to be a close hi-hat instead, you can move it up and down to a different area. And you can also move the length. If you click up here on the numbers, this is how you're going to zoom in and out on your clips. So
You're just moving your mouse when you do that?
I'm clicking and I'm moving my mouse up and down to zoom in and out. So this is where you can affect time. If something's a little early or a little late, I can go through here and change it. If you, let's say that let me make this a little bigger here. If I am starting my loop or my clip, like right here, if I have my MIDI data triggering before my loop happens, this will not trigger. It doesn't know that it doesn't know what MIDI data is coming in. So this always has to be behind where your clip starts or where your, like if you're editing stuff and you chop something off, make it a little shorter, taking up dead space or taking out dead space, always make sure that your MIDI data is starting after it comes in. And you can zoom way in and you can make it just a fraction of a second after that stuff. So you aren't even gonna.
And then was there a different way to zoom to get the what do you call it, like the subdivisions where things can line up on?
Yeah, I hit command 1 or 2. Those are widening and narrowing your grid.
The grid, yeah.
So yep. So if you notice down here, like this is probably to like eighth notes, 16th note, 32nd, 64th. So it makes it a lot more. So I use this grid view a lot when I'm lining up kicking a bass drum,
yeah,
or something. So you can make it kind of help you on a grid. So I mean, typically I use a lot of sight more than sound, especially when my ears get tired when I'm mixing a lot. So that is the MIDI data, the notes that are getting put in, and then also down here, like this 1 to 27, this little area, this is the velocity of the MIDI data that's getting put in. So things like drum samples and also samples that are a little bit more expressive, like a grand piano or a Fender Rhodes or something, like they have different attacks, different velocities that are kind of built into them so that they sound more expressive. So if you're hitting a drum soft versus you're hitting it at full velocity, it's like a drum is going to spread a little bit. It's going to sound different. You can manually enter in what the velocity is going to be of things too. So if you accidentally are playing your keyboard, like some cheaper MIDI controllers, it's really, they're not super velocity sensitive. So there are times that I'll have to go in and I'll have to kind of edit what are happening with my velocities so that all of a sudden one drum hit just isn't out of nowhere just coming and crushing me. Along with this too, I'm going to briefly kind of talk about this since we're into a drum loop and a MIDI kind of thing. There is something, like if my time isn't very good, you can quantize stuff, which means it'll lock stuff to a grid. So I don't have to physically go in and move this one over a little bit because I'm a little early. Looks like this one was late, like this hit should move over there. So instead of me not wanting to go do that, I can go over here to my groove tool. Now, when you're right on groove, it'll probably say none. So I'm going to have to search for. So I will hit this little button up here. This will be my search. I can go into here and look for different drum grooves that I'm going to want to change. I typically do quantize is the one that I use most often. This will be locking everything to a 16th note, locking it to an 8th note, locking it to a 4th note, or a quarter note, excuse me. So let's say I went to a 16. That's the one that I want. I'm going to commit. Boom, it just moved all that MIDI data. So I'll control Z so you can see where I was. That was where it was before.
Yeah.
I'm going to commit. That's where it's going to bring it. So it's going to make sure everything that I was playing is on time all of a sudden. So it's just a little something that can save you some time when you're working on drum grooves. And I mean, that's kind of the name of the game when I'm going through these things, making little arrangements for myself. Is the more time that I spend on something, I typically get sidetracked, and then I'm losing that valuable, precious idea making time.
Yeah, for sure.
So that can be done with that. It can also be done with audio data. I don't typically recommend it with audio data, even though you can kind of change a groove. Instead of making them straight, you can also make them swung. So there's a bunch of different stuff in this groove pool that you can do. But when you're doing it with audio data, you get what are called artifacts. They're really weird blips, little things when you start stretching time. I mean, Ableton is really, really good at it, but it also depends on how high of a recording rate that you're doing at. The higher the recording rate, the more ability do you have to stretch time and pitch. Like a lot of DJ producers or a lot of hip hop producers and DJs and stuff will sometimes take an audio clip and they'll pitch it up almost as a musical tool instead of just having somebody's voice normally, or they'll speed it up, make it sound like a child or a baby or something. I mean, that's how they're doing it, is they're changing time, they're stretching it. That only works super awesome if you have a very, very highly recorded sample. Otherwise it'll sound glitchy and kind of weird.
Yeah, how high, like, what would you say would be an example of
I would try to
highly
record at
recorded?
192K.
Yeah,
I mean, just then you're getting the most information that you can get.
for sure.
You're going to have just the best chance of having a quality sample, and you might have to record it a couple times. I mean,
Yeah.
even with the sample that you're using, I mean, you might have to record it a little bit differently to get it to do what you want. But that's kind of a little more advanced concept maybe for a different time.
Yeah.
So we went through how to record MIDI data just now. We did how to record in if you wanted to try a different bassline. See, do we have any other questions for this exact moment?
Nothing now.
All right, cool. Just make sure I'm not forgetting anything that I wanted to go over as far as good concepts here. Looks like we got about 10 more minutes. All right. So I'm going to go through about looking with different samples here. And I'm going to show you with what I'm talking about with kind of CPU. So I'm going to open up a really heavy synthesizer.
Sweet.
It kind of opens up. So I dropped a synthesizer from Native Instruments. It's one of their new ones that they've got out from Analog Dreams. And like this has got some really awesome 80s style themed synthesizers. And it's also kind of hungry up on my CPU. So you notice how that jumped up to almost 26%, 25%.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to jump much higher than this because I'm going to start running into problems with my computer. So just kind of beware that certain things, like what I would do is if I was actually tracking this and not just kind of messing around, is I would go through on all of these other tracks. And if you right click, you have the ability to freeze a track. No. What this is going to do is temporarily write that track and all of the information that is on it. So all the audio information, and then also any plugin that you have on that track. Because if you notice over here, like on guitar, I've got a guitar cabinet that I'm running through. and I got a tuner, and then the supercharger. This is a compressor. So I've got a couple things just to get my dry guitar tone that I just plugged right into my interface sound a little bit more like a guitar. So what it's going to do is it's going to take all of those plugins that I've got, these three, well, this isn't really doing much, but these other two kind of hungrier plugins, it's going to take them out of my CPU chain. So if I write that and a couple of these other synthesizers, then it is going to free up some more space. So then that I won't be jumping up to 20-some%. I might be at like 12 or anything. So then I'm really knowing throughout my entire take that I have a very low chance of having a dropout or having a compromised sample or compromised audio data. So I'm going to go through and just record like another little pad on here and then show you guys how I get to my final scratch track again.
Sweet.
Solo it out. That's when you're not hearing anything. I'm going to take this off too. So if I go up in here and record, even when I'm not on recording, it will record. So that's enough this moment. No, I didn't like what I did at the beginning there, so I was just clicking on this clip here. I am going to shorten that up. Let's give me, let's see where that sits me. So I'm going to shorten that up to my 4-bar phrase. All right, I can work with that. All right. So that's
good.
how we get some more data in there. And now I'm going to go through, let's see, I'm going to duplicate that. I want that same pad to be happening. So I'm going to copy that, paste that in here. Because these two, both the intro and I had this arranged as like an intro into a verse, into a chorus. Those are both the same progression. So I'm going to leave that in there. And I guess I should maybe record one for the, I got an organ coming in, so that's a little sonically different. We're just going to leave it as that.
What about that? Are you set up to do some talk box today?
I am. I could do that really quick here.
Yeah, I think we can. Right. It's okay if we go a little bit past an hour.
Sure.
I mean, for me,
yeah.
anyway.
Okay. I'll throw a little something else in there. This might briefly be a little weird. I'm gonna need to switch to a different interface because the interface that I'm running it with right now has digital outs, and I need it to be in audio. So I'm gonna switch to a different interface quickly. I don't think this will mess up what we got going on here. Let's find out here. Let's go with that. Switching my output device to that. I'm going to arm this MIDI track, which I have coming out of my other Focusrite interface, or not Focusrite, it's a complete audio. I've got it coming out of that, sending it into an amplifier. Should be coming into here. All right, I am getting data. Great. That's a really good sign. All right, so I hit command. I can arm more than one track. All right, she's working.
Nice.
She is working. All right, let's try adding a little bit of talk box in there.
dig it.
let's
I like how you kind of like beatbox with
go
it.
real quick, see if there's something that I can. Sorry, did you say something? I was briefly not able to hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was saying I like how you kind of like beatbox with it to get those like plosives in there.
Yeah, because you don't make any noise at all with your throat.
Right.
That is, the talk box is now your vocal cords. So you have to. Somebody told me once, like, remember you have or think about what you do when you whisper.
Right.
So you got to really mouth and kind of exaggerate everything here. So let's here, I want to hear what that sounds like. Oh, it helps if I change my interface back. It's crucial.
For sure.
Crucial.
What interface are you using?
I'm using an Apollo X8P.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So let's just go. Let's make this 4-bar. Ooh, let's move it one more over it. All right. Can use that just for a moment here. So I'm going to show you how I end up making a scratch track. So I will go through after I've gone in. Here, let me take this off here. It's weird.
So that's the latency that we were talking about earlier when you're not directly monitoring.
Yep. So this is, so I typically directly monitor off of one of my other interfaces. So this is the slight millisecond interface that you, or delay that you're going to get sometimes when you're recording. That depends on, you can change your bit rate. Because right now I have my bit rate set really low because of what Zoom is able to push through. It doesn't pay for me to be sending something that it can't even receive. So
yeah.
Anyway, so yes, taking that track off, back to normal. So yeah, once I move these all around, have all of these shuffled where I like them, I like to go by row then, so I can make myself a scratch track. So I'm going to go back over to this arrangement view. I still have a bunch of stuff over here that I do not need. Great. And I guess while we're talking about it too, right where we're over here, I really like to add start my tracks like a little bit farther down, not necessarily at 1 all the time. You can add time at the beginning of a track, but I just, whenever I'm starting, I like to start at like 17 usually. So you can just double click right in the middle of a cell and it'll change your track marker up here to 17. So I leave some space at the front if I want to add an intro or add other things at the beginning, then I can.
Sweet.
So anyway, I'll start at 17. We swap back over here to my arrangement view. I am going to record. Make myself a scratch track here. Let that intro go through a couple times. I might then later like lay some type of a solo or some other hook here, go into the verse. Just a little bit. I guess while we're letting this play out, let's say we're going to the chorus now.
Ooh, the 4.
Go ahead.
The 4, it's so happy.
Yeah.
This is sweet groove, by the way, man. Yeah.
Doing stuff like that, going to the relative major or the 4 as a major instead of, I mean, it's not relative, it is a 4 chord, but yeah, making it major within a minor key kind of adds a little bit of little bit of lift.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the music theory talk and
So is
voice
the
reading, things we can talk about a different day.
yeah. Is the click actually, it's not being recorded obviously. Does it just have
Like it's
its
not being recorded. Nope, I forgot that was even on. I have it on so often, it's just like an afterthought.
Yeah, it's in your brain, man.
Okay, let's pretend that was the entire thing here.
Cool.
Some synthesizers have a very, very long decay on them, so even after you stop the track, some of them will still be going. So now over here, I have my exact click track that I made. So from here, I can go and really start editing stuff. Just like when I was down in the clip view before, you can zoom in by going up here on the actual measure numbers and pulling down. So this is going to be what my track is kind of looking like. Then I can go through and I can delete, let's say I want to relay a bass track that is a lot more organic throughout the entire length of the track. Then I'll go through and delete this bass track or make a new one right underneath it or something and go through and play with it, get something organic. Or have the bass player in my band, actual bass player, come in and lay his lines down, something kind of similar to me, just give him an idea. So we'll go through kind of that way, but then I have a start to finish outline of what I'm doing.
Nice.
Which was where we were trying to get.
Sweet. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, now's the time to fire them off. We're kind of coming down to the end, so we'll just kind of wait here and talk about a couple other things, and we'll probably be wrapped up unless you have anything else going on, Weston.
I think I really did get to most of what I wanted to talk about. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the more time you spend with this program, you're going to be finding other tricks. I mean, there are times where I go into something or even work with like another producer friend of mine that's also familiar with Ableton and looking at how he has his sessions arranged. They are different, and there are times. I mean, just last week I was over at a friend's house and we were working on a part, and just the like he showed me some shortcuts and some hotkeys, some different way to do things that I didn't even think about, and I've been doing the long way, the hard way around it for 3 years for us. I mean, so there's always stuff to learn with this bad boy. And then also you're going to find something that's efficient for your workflow. Just the more time you spend with it, depending on what instruments you play, what if you're like he is really, really MIDI savvy. Like he's really, really fast with MIDI stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not super, super fast with MIDI, but I mean, I've been an acoustic player. Like I haven't been in the digital age that long. I mean, so I would rather go through and actually lay down a physical bass part or something like that, where he is really, really good at manipulating the MIDI data to sound like a bass player, because he's not a bass player, he's a keyboard player. Yeah. But he's got stuff that sounds like a bass player if you sit with it, and he knows exactly how to work with the velocities and with the timing of stuff. I mean, he can make those sound like bass players. Nice. But he's a lot more efficient with that, just because that's what he spends his time on. But I mean, you're going to find something that works great for you. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's how much time you spend with it. Totally. It's what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, so I had a question.
Yeah.
Going back to that session view.
Back to the arrangement view here?
Oh, yeah. Wait, is this one the arrangement view? I think I got it backwards now.
Yeah, this is the arrangement. This is where I can arrange things. And then Sweet. Session view is like a normal, I kind of remember it as in a normal recording session.
Yep. Yeah, so arrangement view. So if you're queuing off to the right side, say you're going to queue number 1, do you have to take into consideration what the longest loop is? Like if, because if you have an 8-bar loop, something's 8 bars, and then if there's something 2 bars, will it, the 2-bar thing only play once within the 8, or will it keep going every 2?
It will keep going. It will keep looping.
Okay.
So everything in each one of these cells will loop indefinitely. Unless you can automate them not to do that.
Right.
That's a little bit it's not a super involved process, but I think that's more for a different time, probably for maybe one of our live episodes or something like that. We'll maybe go into that a little bit more. But and how because I mean I have some loops and I'll have samples that I only want to happen one time. I will keep them from this view because on my MIDI controller you can see back here
Yep.
there are some pads, and these will coordinate to the colors that I have within here.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so they all the same colored pads are the same colors as each one of these cells. So that's like when I'm arranging things too. I mean, you can right click, you can change what color any of these are going to be. So I have samples color coded. So
Cool.
when I want to fire off a single sample, I can just hit the button for my MIDI controller and I go back to whatever else I'm doing. Because I mean, typically I'm doing 3-4 things at one time when I'm playing. So
Yeah.
that makes it nice and easy. And I mean, if you have like the Akai, the APC 40, those ones work really awesome for this. Or if you have an Ableton proprietary one, like one of the push or the push 2, like
Yep.
those are also really great. But yeah, they'll be all color coded. All of these cells will be lit up with what you have. And I mean, so you can play live. If you've got drum racks that you're in, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, all those can be either used from your pads or your keyboard, depending on where you assign them.
Sweet.
Um,
Right
but
on. Yeah. Yeah, I have that Akai 40. I'm just kind of
yeah,
figuring it out, starting to get it figured out, I
yeah,
guess.
those are great for producing, great for DJing, great for, you know, um, live set play. Um,
A bit older, but
yeah,
still.
yeah, I think our bass player's on his like sixth one of those probably. He has to give it the Fonz every once in a while,
Right.
smash it on stage, and it seems to work for him.
Yep.
Not that they're poorly built, but I mean it's just been all over the country and
Yep.
played a lot.
Right on. Yeah, so I guess we're going to kind of wrap it up. I just kind of wanted to ask you, um, do you have any, I guess everything's kind of at a standstill at this point for as far as performing and stuff, but were you guys
Yeah,
planning on a tour or have you like rescheduled things for next year or is it all just kind of up in the air?
it's really up in the air. I mean, we had some tours scheduled, but yeah, everything's kind of canceled. We did play a gig last weekend in Omaha, Nebraska. It was an outdoor like drive-in movie theater style. Like
Oh, cool.
we yeah, we sent a feed out of our board into an FM transmitter so people could tune in their cars. It was weird. Instead of applause, everybody was honking their horns and flashing their lights.
Wow,
It was
that's
pretty surreal
interesting.
actually.
Yeah,
But
I haven't never heard of that before. That's cool.
but yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, other than that, we've been doing a couple of live streams
Yep.
and everything, but no, for right now, we're just kind of a standstill. I mean, I don't really know what it's going to look like when we come back. I mean, unfortunately, just as much as people are kind of hurting right now, I know that a lot of these live venues and, festivals and clubs and things like that aren't doing well either. I mean,
Yep.
whether live music was a main source of their income or, I mean, just not having patrons and they're doing things. I mean, they still have rent, they still have bills, they still have heat. Um,
Yep.
I really, really hope that they're going to be around after all this. And I mean, so I don't know if the way that we approach this industry is going to change,
Uh-huh.
but the thing about us is, just as a society is we're pretty resilient and resourceful. And I think that, at the end of the day, we're all going to be okay.
For sure.
And we're going to make the best of what we got.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on the stuff about the venues. I mean, I've heard a lot, everyone's doing online busking and stuff, all the musicians, but you know, there's a venue called the Nectar Lounge in Seattle. They're doing a fundraiser
And I played there a couple
kind of
times.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that a lot. So I mean, I feel like, um, it'd be awesome if we could all, throw some money at the venues too, as well as try to make money
Yeah.
ourselves, not make money, but, just reaching out. That's kind of what we're doing today. Um, you know,
Mhm.
so, but yeah, it's been awesome having you,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. Yeah. It's, oh yeah, it's been great. This was the first time I've ever done one of these. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, this is my second one. I never thought, I'd be doing this, but it's enjoying it. I get to hang out with my homies from all around the US and I like, that's kind of another thing that has happened since the quarantine. Like this whole kind of situation is unfortunate, but there's been a lot of good stuff. Like we were talking about earlier, how you've been really dialing in your mixing and practicing or
Yeah.
whatever, and then we're doing this. It's just like we're it's sparking new kind of experiences and hangouts and more
Yeah.
connection with people I haven't seen for a while. So yeah, it's been pretty sweet.
We'll get it figured out.
Yeah. All right, Weston. Well, if
All
there's
right.
nothing else you want to say, it's great having you again. And like I said at the beginning, everyone, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna have a few more of these. Weston is gonna be back next week, next Friday, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. Next week, yeah, we're gonna be talking about how I use this in a live situation. So we're gonna go into a couple of different things that Ableton has to offer, and really dive more into how to control your CPU. How Because I'll be running multiple instances of different synthesizers at one time, so it can be very hungry. Um, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about linking Ableton sessions together with another computer through a closed network. We're going to be talking about how the loop functions work a little bit differently. Um, but yeah, I think it'll be a pretty fun episode. And then the other thing that I was going to mention too is like it's really great that you're doing this for a lot of people. I mean, it's I think even though we've got a little bit of time, I mean, this creative process has kind of been saving a lot of people. If you got to be stuck at home, at least you can be doing something that's like fun,
Yeah,
and worthwhile. So
for sure.
that's great.
Yep. Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks again. And one final thing, if you guys want to take some private lessons from Weston, he's also doing that, so I can connect you with him if you get a hold of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I guess, yeah, if you had any other questions too, I mean, you can either probably write them in the chats after this is done, or you
Yep.
can probably get them over into an email through, just talk through the school, and they can connect you to me.
Yep, for sure. Comment on the YouTube channel. Subscribe for more. Trying to get that going. So, anyway, hey, thanks a lot for tuning in, everyone. Thanks again, Weston.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you.
All right. Take care.